Christopher Columbus did not discover America. This claim, though simple, shakes the foundation of widely taught historical narratives. For Black Americans, this truth opens up deeper questions about identity and lineage. Have you ever wondered about your ancestors? Despite advances in historical research and DNA tracing, the lineage of Black Americans remains a story often clouded by mystery and misrepresentation. The prevailing belief is that every Black American can trace their ancestry back to Africans enslaved and forcibly brought to the Americas during the transatlantic slave trade. Historians have long claimed that the first Black people arrived in the early 16th century, transported by Portuguese and Spanish traders. But what if these claims are only part of the story? What if they miss a crucial truth hidden beneath layers of omission and distortion? It wouldn't be the first time history has misled us. Some theories suggest that African slaves intermarried with Native Americans who lived in the Americas before European colonization, contributing to the formation of the Black American population. While plausible, another possibility, one grounded in growing evidence yet rarely discussed, points to Africans arriving in the Americas long before the transatlantic slave trade. These early Africans weren't enslaved, they were explorers, traders, and seafarers who reached the Americas by design or by accident. Their journeys and interactions left a lasting influence on the civilizations they encountered. This pre-Columbian presence of Africans challenges deeply ingrained narratives about early American history. It suggests that the societies flourishing in the Americas before Columbus were far more complex and interconnected than previously acknowledged. The idea that Africans played a role in shaping these civilizations might sound radical, perhaps even absurd to some, but it stands as an increasingly undeniable truth. To grasp this concept, we must look beyond 1492, beyond the simplistic story of Columbus discovering a new world. The reality is that Columbus never set foot on the mainland Americas. His voyages confined him to the Caribbean, where he only glimpsed the edges of rich and thriving civilizations. These civilizations, it seems, had already been influenced by African presence and ingenuity, long before Columbus ever set sail. For Black Americans today, this history isn't just an academic curiosity. It's a path to understanding and reclaiming identity. Family oral traditions, often dismissed by formal historians, hold valuable clues about ancestral origins. These traditions reveal that Black Americans, even within the same country, may trace their roots to vastly different lineages, shaped by diverse migrations, intermarriages, and cultural exchanges. The depth and variety of these histories are both surprising and empowering. The pre-Columbian presence of Africans in the Americas reminds us that history is not static. It evolves as new truths are uncovered. It challenges us to rethink the origins of civilization in the Americas and to honor the contributions of African voyagers who dare to traverse the vast Atlantic, leaving a legacy that continues to shape the fabric of Black American identity. Far from being a footnote in history, these pioneers deserve recognition as part of the rich and interconnected story of human achievement. This is more than a collection of beliefs or distant theories. It is a living record of ancestry, preserved and passed down through generations. These traditions serve as a bridge to the past, safeguarding cultural memory and fostering a sense of belonging that will carry forward into the future. It is a profound connection that transcends time and space, echoing the resilience and strength of those who came before. Long before Columbus stumbled upon the Caribbean, countless mariners had already ventured to the Americas. These explorers, arriving not just decades, but possibly eons earlier, left their mark on the islands and the continent. Recent discoveries have brought to light growing evidence that some of these pre-Columbian travelers hailed from Africa. This challenges long-held narratives and opens up a richer, more nuanced understanding of history. For Black Americans, oral traditions have been a powerful tool in preserving this connection to the past. Elders use stories to pass on the trials, triumphs, and traditions of their ancestors. These narratives go beyond historical records to provide a deeply human perspective on migration, survival, resistance, and achievement. They form a vital thread in the fabric of Black American identity, offering insights into the resilience and ingenuity of those who built lives in the face of unimaginable hardships. The oral tradition serves as a bridge across generations, ensuring that family histories and cultural values endure. It offers continuity, weaving individual and collective identity into a shared tapestry of memory. This connection fosters a responsibility to honor and preserve heritage, not just as a nod to the past, but as a gift for future generations. While specifics may shift over time, the core themes of these stories remain intact, reflecting enduring values and principles. Given the lack of reliable documentation by enslavers, who had little incentive to accurately record the lives of those they sought to dehumanize, oral histories have become an essential source of truth. These stories fill in the gaps left by incomplete or biased records, offering a more authentic perspective on Black American ancestry and identity. One of the prevailing theories of Black American origins traces their lineage back to Africa. This is supported by numerous DNA studies, which reveal that the genetic makeup of modern-day Black Americans carries the unmistakable imprint of their African forebears. This evidence reinforces the profound connection between past and present, showing how the struggles and triumphs of ancestors continue to shape the lives of their descendants. In this way, oral traditions and genetic studies work together to illuminate the richness and complexity of Black American history. They reveal a legacy of survival, strength, and contribution that goes far beyond the simplistic narratives often taught. Together, they form a powerful testament to the enduring spirit of a people, ensuring that their story remains alive, respected, and understood for generations to come. Approximately 55% of the Black American population carries African ancestry, as revealed by publicly available DNA studies. This connection is further supported by historical records documenting the transatlantic slave trade, which forcibly brought millions of Africans to the Americas. While this horrific chapter in history severed many ties between Black communities and their ancestral cultures, it also forged a shared history that remains a source of identity and resilience. Despite centuries of enslavement and systemic oppression, Black Americans have preserved and passed down elements of African culture. From language, music, and dance to spirituality and cuisine, these cultural aspects remain powerful reminders of their African origins and the vibrant lives of their ancestors. This enduring legacy is not just a testament to survival, but also to the strength and adaptability of Black communities. Yet, the narrative of African contributions to the Americas extends far beyond the transatlantic slave trade. Emerging evidence suggests that Africans may have reached the Americas long before Columbus's arrival. Among the first to explore this possibility was Leo Weiner, a linguist and scholar of Russian origin who immigrated to the United States in the late 19th century. Originally en route to establish a vegetarian commune in British Honduras, Weiner's plans took an unexpected turn, leading him to return to the U.S. and take up a position as a professor at Harvard University. While studying Mesoamerica, Weiner noticed striking similarities between African and American cultures, ranging from language to botanical practices. These observations prompted him to delve deeper into the potential connections between Africa and the Americas. Between 1920 and 1922, he published a groundbreaking 3-volume work titled Africa and the Discovery of America. In this extensive study, Weiner presented linguistic, cultural, and botanical evidence suggesting that Africans may have influenced the development of certain American civilizations long before the arrival of Europeans. Weiner's work challenged conventional historical narratives and opened the door to further exploration of pre-Columbian African influences. While his theories were met with skepticism in his time, they have since inspired researchers and historians to reconsider the complexity of early American history. His observations provide a compelling lens through which to view the interconnectedness of human civilizations and the enduring contributions of African peoples to global heritage. For Black Americans today, understanding these connections offers a profound sense of identity and pride. It underscores the importance of preserving cultural traditions and recognizing the multifaceted history of their ancestry. The stories, studies, and evidence passed down through generations continue to enrich our understanding of the past, reminding us that the history of the Americas is far more intricate than we once believed. In the 1920s, Leo Weiner's groundbreaking theories about African influences in the Americas faced significant challenges due to the lack of archaeological evidence to support his claims. At the time, much of the focus in archaeology revolved around high-profile expeditions in places like Egypt, such as Howard Carter's famous discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb. With limited resources and prevailing Eurocentric narratives, Weiner relied heavily on linguistic and botanical connections. Yet, he suspected that other, more tangible evidence existed, clues waiting to be uncovered. One of Weiner's compelling arguments came from Christopher Columbus himself. In the diary of his second voyage, Columbus recorded a remarkable account. The indigenous people of Hispaniola presented him with gold-tipped metal spearheads. When asked about their origins, the natives described black-skinned people who had arrived in large boats from the south and southeast. Intrigued, Columbus returned to Spain with the spearheads, where metallurgical analysis revealed a startling discovery. The alloy, referred to by the natives as guanine, was a precise match for metals used in West Africa. Composed of 18 parts gold, 6 parts silver, and 8 parts copper, this alloy had been utilized for centuries by African civilizations such as the Mali Empire and the Moors. Moreover, the term guanine was identical to the name used for this metal by West Africans, a linguistic and cultural connection that was difficult to dismiss. Despite the significance of these findings, little was made of them at the time. Political motivations likely played a role, as acknowledging African exploration of the Americas would have undermined Spain's claims of discovery and dominance in the New World. This silence may explain why such compelling evidence was left unexplored for decades, relegated to the margins of history. Alternative ancestral hypotheses for Black Americans. While the theory of African pre-Columbian explorers is one pathway to understanding Black American ancestry, it is not the only one. Another widely held belief is that some Black Americans can trace their lineage to the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Oral traditions within many Black families tell stories of Native American ancestry, passed down through generations. These narratives often find support in historical records, such as marriage licenses, census data, and land deeds, which document interactions and unions between Native Americans and African slaves or freed individuals. Genetic genealogy has further validated these claims, identifying shared markers between African and indigenous populations. This blending of African and indigenous heritage reflects a history of resilience and adaptation. Enslaved Africans and Native Americans often found common ground as they faced oppression under European colonization, forming alliances and intermarrying. These connections became an integral part of the cultural and familial fabric of many Black Americans, reinforcing a rich and multifaceted heritage. The Hebrew-Israelite hypothesis, another intriguing theory, suggests that some Black Americans may trace their ancestry to the ancient Hebrew Israelites. This belief, rooted in both religious tradition and oral history, posits that the Israelites, described in biblical texts, migrated to various parts of Africa over time. Proponents of this theory highlight physical descriptions in scriptures like the Song of Solomon and Lamentations, which they interpret as evidence of shared characteristics between Israelites and Black people. Historical accounts also document the presence of Jewish communities in Africa, particularly in regions such as Ethiopia, Ghana, and Mali. These migrations, some argue, may have played a role in the eventual displacement of these populations to the Americas during the transatlantic slave trade. Within certain Black American communities, oral traditions reinforce claims of Hebrew Israelite ancestry, emphasizing spiritual and cultural connections to ancient Israel. While this theory remains more contested than others, it speaks to the diverse and layered narratives that contribute to the understanding of Black American identity. A tapestry of heritage, the ancestry of Black Americans is not defined by a single narrative, but rather by a rich tapestry of interconnected histories. Whether through African mariners who ventured to the Americas long before Columbus, Native American communities who intermarried with African populations, or the possible connections to ancient Israelites, these stories highlight the complexity of Black heritage. Each theory adds depth to the shared history of migration, survival, and cultural preservation that continues to shape Black American identity today. Ultimately, these narratives underscore the importance of exploring history beyond traditional frameworks. By piecing together oral traditions, genetic studies, and historical records, we gain a more nuanced understanding of the past, one that honors the resilience and contributions of those who came before. The ancestry of Black Americans is a rich and complex tapestry, woven from countless threads of history, culture, and migration. Among the many theories of origin, some trace lineage to the Hebrew Israelites, others to Europe, and still others to the Caribbean and Latin America. Each of these theories contributes to a broader understanding of Black American identity, highlighting the interconnectedness of global histories and the enduring influence of cultural traditions. The Hebrew-Israelite connection stories of descent from the Hebrew Israelites are prominent in many Black American oral traditions. These narratives often draw upon biblical texts, cultural practices, and genetic ancestry testing to support claims of lineage. Some individuals and groups within Black American communities integrate Hebrew language, customs, and religious practices into their daily lives. Observances of biblical holidays, adherence to dietary laws, and the incorporation of Hebrew traditions in worship are among the ways these communities express their heritage. While these shared cultural elements could stem from historical influences or religious syncretism, they remain significant markers of identity for those who hold to this lineage. The transatlantic slave trade and earlier migrations of African peoples are thought to have contributed to the dispersion of descendants of the Israelites across Africa and eventually to the Americas. In this way, the forced migration of Africans during slavery not only shaped the physical displacement of populations, but also carried with it spiritual and cultural connections that persist in Black American communities today. European ancestry, a complicated legacy. Another prominent theory suggests that many Black Americans can trace their ancestry to Europe, often as a result of the brutal realities of slavery in the United States. The history of sexual exploitation and coercion under the institution of slavery left a profound legacy, with power imbalances resulting in relationships that were often non-consensual. As a result, many Black Americans today recognize the likelihood of European ancestry within their family histories. This connection is often reflected in family stories passed down through generations, particularly those involving lighter-skinned relatives or European physical traits. Genealogical studies and historical records have, in some cases, provided evidence of these ties, adding another layer to the multifaceted identities of Black Americans. While this ancestry is often a painful reminder of a history of oppression, it also speaks to the resilience of those who endured and survived such systemic injustice. The Caribbean and Latin American influence, the African diaspora extends across the Americas, with the Caribbean and Latin America serving as significant cultural and historical touchstones for many Black Americans. The transatlantic slave trade brought millions of Africans to regions such as the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Trinidad and Tobago, and Jamaica, where they mingled with Indigenous and European populations. Over centuries, these interactions gave rise to vibrant, diverse cultures that continue to influence Black communities in the United States. For some Black Americans, tracing ancestry to the Caribbean or Latin America offers a sense of connection to these rich cultural traditions. The music, cuisine, and religious practices of these regions have left an indelible mark on the broader African diaspora. Trinidad and Tobago, for instance, exemplifies this blending of cultures, with its population reflecting a fusion of African, Indian, Indigenous, and European heritage. This cultural exchange demonstrates the enduring impact of migration and the shared histories that unite Black communities across the globe. A shared narrative of resilience, these diverse theories of origin, from the Hebrew Israelites to European, Caribbean, and Latin American ancestries, underscore the complexity of Black American heritage. Each perspective reveals a different facet of history, shaped by migration, survival, and the blending of cultures. Together, they offer a fuller picture of the Black American experience, one rooted in resilience and adaptation. Whether through oral traditions, genetic studies, or historical records, these narratives remind us that identity is never singular. It is a mosaic of stories, connections, and legacies that continue to shape and inspire future generations. By honoring these varied histories, Black Americans celebrate not only their ancestors' struggles, but also their enduring contributions to the fabric of global civilization. The ancestry of Black Americans is a complex narrative interwoven with stories of resilience, migration, and cultural blending. While many trace their roots to Africa through the transatlantic slave trade, there are theories and evidence pointing to alternative and equally compelling origins. Among these is the idea that some Black Americans descend from the original Black inhabitants of the Americas, people who lived on this land long before Columbus and the institution of slavery reshaped its history. The pre-Columbian African presence theory, the theory of pre-Columbian African presence in the Americas, challenges the standard historical narrative focused on European conquest and African enslavement. According to this school of thought, Africans reached the Americas through intentional exploration or accidental voyages long before Columbus's 1492 expedition. Proponents cite archaeological evidence, historical accounts, and cultural similarities to support their claims. Artifacts from Mexico's Olmec civilization, for example, depict figures with distinctly African features, sparking debate about possible African influence in ancient American societies. Other signs include architectural styles, agricultural practices, and artistic motifs in indigenous American cultures that bear striking resemblances to African traditions. Genetic studies have also identified markers in some indigenous American populations that link them to African ancestry, suggesting early interactions or migrations. Linguistic studies further bolster this theory, highlighting similarities between African and indigenous American languages. Accounts from African oral traditions and early European explorers, such as stories of Abu Bakr II of Mali sailing across the Atlantic, add depth to the narrative. These parallels between African and indigenous cultures, whether in art, spirituality, or agricultural techniques, offer tantalizing evidence of contact long before European colonization. A broader understanding of Native American, the racial makeup of the indigenous peoples of the Americas, has often been oversimplified. For convenience, European colonizers categorized all pre-existing populations under the term Native American, disregarding potential ethnic and racial diversity. This oversimplification obscured the possibility that people of African descent may have lived in the Americas before European contact. The idea that Black Americans may trace their ancestry to these early inhabitants invites a re-evaluation of what it means to be native to the Americas. Native Black American tribes, blending African and indigenous heritage throughout American history, many enslaved Africans sought refuge within Native American communities. These alliances formed out of necessity and shared struggles against colonization and oppression, led to the creation of unique cultural identities. Native Black American tribes emerged as a testament to this blending of African and indigenous heritage. Their contributions to resistance movements, cultural preservation, and the fight for freedom have largely been overlooked in mainstream history. These tribes played critical roles in resisting colonization, fighting for justice, and shaping the cultural landscape of the Americas. Their stories are a reminder of the resilience and ingenuity of Black and indigenous peoples in the face of systemic erasure. Forgotten histories and hidden legacies. What if some of the most powerful Native Black American tribes have been erased from history? Their cultures, contributions, and legacies hidden from view? This intentional obscuration deprives us of a fuller understanding of how Black and indigenous histories intersect. By uncovering these forgotten stories, we can honor their legacies and recognize the vital roles they played in shaping the nation. Through oral histories, genealogical records, and archaeological discoveries, we begin to see a more accurate picture of the diverse origins of Black Americans. Whether through African mariners who explored the Americas, enslaved Africans who found refuge with native communities, or the blending of cultures through migration and resistance. These stories reveal a rich and multifaceted heritage. Call to action: this journey into the forgotten histories of Black Americans isn't just about revisiting the past, it's about reclaiming it. Each theory and piece of evidence contributes to a deeper understanding of Black identity, connecting generations through shared experiences and cultural resilience. If these histories resonate with you, we encourage you to explore your own ancestry and share your family stories. Let's continue the conversation about the origins, struggles, and triumphs of Black Americans. Together, we can honor the past while building a more inclusive understanding of history. And if you're inspired by these stories, consider subscribing to platforms that amplify these voices. Your engagement helps ensure these narratives remain alive and accessible for generations to come. The stories of Black Native Americans are a powerful testament to resilience and survival, yet they have often been silenced or erased from mainstream history. Welcome to Chronicles of Blacks, where we uncover the hidden and suppressed legacies of Black history. In this video, we'll delve into the untold stories of Native Black American tribes, honoring their contributions and recognizing how they shaped both Native and African American cultures. Together, let's reclaim these erased legacies. The historical context of Black Native American tribes. To truly understand the significance of Black Native American tribes, we must first explore the historical context that led to their formation and the subsequent erasure of their contributions. The story of Black Native Americans is not a linear one. It is a complex tapestry woven with threads of pain, survival, and shared strength. For centuries, enslaved Africans were forcibly brought to the Americas. Many, however, found ways to escape the brutality of slavery, seeking refuge among Native American tribes. Some escaped from plantations, while others were brought into Native communities by European settlers who had formed alliances with Native nations. These African escapees didn't merely seek shelter. They became integral members of the tribes they joined. They intermarried, shared knowledge, and built strong, resilient communities that merged African and indigenous traditions. The fusion of cultures and identities, this blending of African and Native American cultures, gave rise to unique communities where the identities of the two groups became inseparable. These bonds were born not only out of necessity, but also from shared experiences of oppression and resistance. Together, they fought to protect their lands and freedoms from the encroachment of colonial forces. One notable example of this alliance can be found in the southeastern United States, where the Seminole tribe offered refuge to many runaway slaves. These individuals were welcomed as free people and fully incorporated into the Seminole society. Over time, this fusion of Seminole and African cultures produced a vibrant and distinct community. The Seminole Wars, fought against U.S. forces, highlighted the strength of this bond. Black Seminoles played a critical role in these conflicts, standing shoulder to shoulder with their native allies to resist colonization and oppression. Resistance and erasure despite their strength and resilience. The contributions of Black Native Americans have been systematically minimized or erased. Their presence was often excluded from historical narratives, and their cultural legacies were overshadowed by policies of assimilation, forced relocation, and slavery. The United States government, through acts of systemic violence and cultural suppression, sought to eliminate the diversity within Native tribes. Post-Civil War policies further marginalized Black members of Native American nations. Tribes like the Cherokee, Choctaw, and Creek, who had fought alongside Black allies, often excluded descendants of enslaved individuals from citizenship or land rights as they struggled to retain their own sovereignty. This erasure persisted into the 20th century and beyond, as historical narratives increasingly overlooked the intertwined histories of Black and Native peoples. Efforts to assimilate Native Americans into the broader U.S. society often erased the complexities of their communities, including the integral role of Black members. Reclaiming forgotten legacies, it's time to reclaim these hidden histories. By shining a light on the contributions of Native Black American tribes, we honor their resilience and recognize their influence on the cultural and historical landscape of the Americas. These stories remind us of the power of unity, the strength found in diversity, and the enduring spirit of those who resisted colonization and oppression. The legacies of these tribes did not vanish. They live on in the descendants who continue to carry their stories and traditions. Uncovering these narratives is not just about correcting history. It's about celebrating the strength and creativity of communities that thrive despite efforts to erase them. Join the conversation if these stories resonate with you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you have family histories or ancestral connections to Native or Black communities? Let us know how these histories inspire you. And if you want us to explore more hidden legacies, leave your suggestions. We're here to continue uncovering the stories that deserve to be told. Subscribe to Chronicles of Blacks for more in-depth explorations of erased histories. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. Together, we can shine a light on the past and honor the legacies that have shaped the present. Let's keep these stories alive. In modern times, many Black descendants of Native American tribes continue their fight for recognition and equal rights within the very nations they helped shape. Their struggles echo through history, a reminder of the resilience and determination of communities that have faced erasure and systemic denial. For example, the Cherokee Freedmen, descendants of enslaved Black people within the Cherokee Nation, have been engaged in long-standing legal battles for acknowledgement and inclusion. These fights for citizenship are not merely about historical accuracy. They are about justice, equity, and ensuring that the contributions of Black Native Americans are fully recognized in the broader narrative of American history. The importance of highlighting erased histories. Why is it essential to shed light on these erased histories now? First and foremost, it is a matter of justice. Black Native Americans have a rightful place in both Native American and African American histories. Their experiences challenge the simplified narratives often presented about race, identity, and culture in America. Recognizing these stories enriches our understanding of America's past, offering a fuller, more complex picture of the interconnected legacies of Indigenous and African peoples. Highlighting these histories is also an opportunity for healing. The struggle for recognition isn't only about rectifying historical omissions. It's about treating the descendants of these communities with dignity and respect. It's about honoring their ongoing contributions to the cultural and political fabric of the United States and acknowledging their fight for justice and equality. By bringing these stories to light, we pave the way for reconciliation and a more inclusive understanding of America's heritage. The Black Native American legacy. To truly grasp the history of the United States, we cannot ignore the stories of Black Native American tribes. These tribes played vital roles in shaping the nation's fabric, and their legacies deserve to be remembered and celebrated. Through their struggles for survival, freedom, and identity, they have left an indelible mark on both Native American and African American histories. By honoring their stories, we honor the richness and complexity of America's past. As we explore the specific tribes erased from history, it becomes clear how deeply intertwined Black and Native American histories are and how much we still have to learn from these forgotten communities. These tribes were not mere survivors of oppression. They were active participants in shaping a world that continues to grapple with the challenges they faced. Their legacies are part of the broader American narrative, and now is the time to bring them back into the spotlight. The story of the Black Seminoles, one of the most significant examples of Black Native American tribes erased from history, is the Black Seminoles. Their story begins in the early 18th century when African people, primarily enslaved by European settlers, began escaping plantations in the southern colonies of what would later become the United States. These runaway slaves sought freedom and sanctuary in the swamps and forests of Florida, a territory then controlled by the Spanish. In an effort to weaken the English colonies, the Spanish offered freedom to any runaway slave who sought refuge in Florida and agreed to convert to Catholicism. This policy created a haven for these freedom seekers, who eventually formed alliances with the Seminole tribe. Over time, the escaped Africans and the Seminoles developed a unique, intertwined culture. The Black Seminoles were not only integrated into Seminole society, but became vital members, contributing to the tribe's strength and resilience. The Black Seminoles' legacy is deeply tied to their role in resisting colonization and slavery. During the Seminole Wars in the 19th century, the Black Seminoles fought alongside their native allies against U.S. forces, defying attempts to displace them from their lands. Their fierce resistance made them a target for the U.S. government, which sought to undermine the bonds between Black and Native peoples. Yet their legacy of defiance and resilience continues to inspire. Reclaiming their place in history, the stories of Black Native American tribes, like the Black Seminoles, demonstrate the power of unity and the strength found in shared struggles. These communities were not passive recipients of history. They were active participants in shaping it. Their stories remind us of the enduring impact of solidarity and the ongoing fight for justice. By uncovering and honoring these erased legacies, we not only restore justice to those who have been forgotten, but also deepen our understanding of America's complex and multifaceted history. These stories are not just about the past. They inform the present and guide us toward a more inclusive future. Now is the time to ensure that the contributions of Black Native Americans are fully integrated into our historical narrative. Their courage, resilience, and determination continue to shape the nation, and their legacy deserves the spotlight it has long been denied. The story of the Black Seminoles is one of remarkable resilience, blending cultures, and an unyielding fight for freedom. Their journey began in the swamps and forests of Florida, where escaped African slaves sought refuge from the brutal conditions of enslavement. The Spanish, who controlled Florida at the time, offered freedom to runaway slaves in exchange for converting to Catholicism and aiding in the defense of the territory. Many Africans seized this opportunity, seeking not only freedom, but also the possibility of building new lives. The formation of a unique community freedom in Florida came with more than just sanctuary. Runaway slaves found allies in the Seminole tribe, a Native American people who had lived in Florida for centuries. Over time, these African refugees and the Seminoles formed a unique and tightly knit community. They shared customs, languages, and traditions, creating a fusion of African and Seminole ways of life that few could have predicted. This blended culture grew into what we now recognize as the Black Seminoles. By the 1800s, the Black Seminoles had become a significant and powerful community. Their growing influence and success, however, posed a threat to U.S. colonial interests. This led to their active involvement in the Seminole Wars, a series of conflicts in which Native American tribes resisted forced relocation under the U.S. government's policies. The Seminole Wars and the role of the Black Seminoles. The Black Seminoles played a pivotal role in these wars, which were part of the larger struggle by Native American tribes to protect their lands and sovereignty. Their knowledge of the Florida terrain, combined with their military skills, made them indispensable to the Seminole resistance. Leaders like John Horse emerged as key figures in these battles. Once enslaved, Horse became a prominent leader of the Black Seminoles, guiding hundreds of them to safety in Mexico after being outnumbered and outgunned by U.S. forces. He is celebrated as one of the greatest leaders in Black Seminole history. The Seminole Wars showcased the Black Seminoles' resilience and determination to resist oppression. Their contributions were not limited to military efforts. They were integral to the community's ability to survive and thrive in the face of overwhelming odds. Despite their critical role, however, their stories have often been overlooked or sidelined in mainstream narratives of American history. Migration and marginalization after the wars, the Black Seminoles and their allies faced continued pressure from the U.S. government. Many were forced to migrate west to what is now Oklahoma, where they were incorporated into the Seminole Nation. Others settled in Mexico, where they established a community and maintained their distinct cultural identity. However, the struggle for recognition and inclusion didn't end with migration. In the 20th century, many Black Seminole descendants found themselves excluded from the official roles of the Seminole Nation. Despite their long history and vital contributions to the tribe's survival, they were marginalized within the very community they had helped to build. This exclusion, which persists in some cases today, has contributed to the erasure of the Black Seminole legacy. A legacy of resilience and unity, the Black Seminole story is a testament to the enduring power of resilience and survival. They not only fought for freedom, but also built a community that celebrated both African and Native identities. Their culture and traditions were a blending of two worlds, a living example of how diverse groups can come together to create something entirely new. The legacy of the Black Seminoles is an essential chapter in the history of resistance to colonialism and slavery in the United States. Their contributions to the Seminole Wars, their leadership in the face of adversity, and their efforts to build inclusive communities are a powerful reminder of the strength found in unity and shared purpose. Recognizing the Black Seminoles today, the story of the Black Seminoles is gaining more attention, though much work remains to fully integrate their legacy into the broader narrative of American history. Recognizing their contributions is not just about correcting the historical record. It is about celebrating a community that refused to be defined by oppression. It is about honoring their role in shaping the cultural and political landscape of the United States. The Black Seminoles represent a unique and enduring legacy, one that challenges simplified narratives of race, identity, and resistance. Their story is a reminder that history is often more intricate and interconnected than we realize. By bringing their contributions into the spotlight, we honor their resilience and ensure their legacy continues to inspire future generations. They resisted the forced assimilation and erasure of their cultures, even as their history was obscured. But through it all, they kept their traditions alive, passing down stories of their ancestors' resistance and survival. The legacy of the Black Seminoles is rich and complex, and their contributions to the history of both African Americans and Native Americans should not be forgotten. While they may have been erased from mainstream narratives, their story is being rediscovered by historians, descendants, and activists who are working tirelessly to honor and reclaim the history of this remarkable community. The Cherokee Freedmen are another critical part of the history of Black Native American tribes that has been largely erased. The story of the Cherokee Freedmen begins with the forced relocation of the Cherokee people during the Trail of Tears in the 1830s. Prior to this, many Black people were enslaved by the Cherokee, much like other Native American tribes in the southeastern United States. However, unlike many other tribes, the Cherokee were particularly involved in the institution of slavery. They were one of the few Native groups to hold enslaved people of African descent, and many of these enslaved individuals were adopted into the tribe once they were freed after the Civil War. After the Civil War, the Cherokee were forced to make treaties with the U.S. government, and one of the conditions was the incorporation of formerly enslaved Black people, known as the Cherokee Freedmen, into their nation. These freedmen and their descendants were promised rights as full citizens of the Cherokee Nation. But over time, their rights were undermined and stripped away. For decades, the Cherokee Freedmen were recognized as part of the Cherokee Nation. But in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, efforts to exclude them from the rolls of the tribe began. This exclusion was partly due to racial prejudice and a desire to maintain a pure Native identity, which led to the forced removal of many Cherokee freedmen from the tribe. They were no longer granted citizenship rights, despite their deep ties to the Cherokee people and their history of fighting alongside them during the Civil War. The struggle of the Cherokee freedmen for recognition and reparations has continued for over a century. In the early 21st century, their descendants, including modern-day activists, fought for the reinstatement of their rights within the Cherokee Nation. In 2007, the Cherokee Nation voted to remove the freedmen from the tribe's rolls, leading to an ongoing battle for justice and recognition. The decision to disenfranchise the freedmen sparked protests and legal action, with many descendants of the freedmen insisting that their ancestors had as much a right to Cherokee citizenship as any other member of the tribe. The story of the Cherokee freedmen is one of profound injustice and struggle. These individuals were not only victims of slavery and racism, but also victims of historical erasure. For much of American history, their contributions to the Cherokee Nation and their long-standing identity as Cherokee citizens have been overlooked. Yet, The legacy of the Cherokee Freedmen is an essential part of both African American and Native American history, and it remains vital to continue to fight for the recognition of their place within the Cherokee Nation. The Creek Nation, also known as the Muskogee Nation, is one of the most significant Native American tribes in the southeastern United States. As with many other tribes in the region, the Creek were forcibly relocated during the infamous Trail of Tears in the 1830s. This tragic event was part of the U.S. government's policy of Indian removal, which aimed to relocate indigenous populations from their ancestral lands to reservations west of the Mississippi River. During this period, the Creek Nation also became heavily involved in the institution of slavery, much like other southern tribes. The Black Creek, enslaved African individuals who were brought into Creek communities, formed a significant part of the tribe's social and economic structure. Over time, many of these enslaved individuals became integral members of Creek society. However, their status as enslaved people was transformed after the Civil War, when the Emancipation Proclamation freed them and granted them the opportunity to fight for full citizenship in the tribe. This marked the beginning of the Creek Freedmen played a crucial role in the post-war rebuilding and recovery of the Creek Nation. After the Civil War, the Creek Treaty of 1866 was signed, and one of its most important stipulations was the recognition of the freedmen as full citizens of the Creek Nation. This treaty granted the formerly enslaved Black Creek individuals the right to own land, vote, and participate fully in the tribe's government. But the contributions of the Creek Freedmen weren't just political, they were also military. Many Black Creek individuals fought on behalf of the Creek Nation during the Civil War. While some fought alongside the Confederacy, many others aligned with the Union, particularly after the Emancipation Proclamation. They became an important part of the Creek military resistance and played pivotal roles in the fight to preserve the autonomy and sovereignty of the Creek Nation. Their service and sacrifice were vital in the nation's defense and post-war recovery. Following the war, the Creek Freedmen helped rebuild their communities, playing key roles in the development of the economy and the restructuring of the nation's social fabric. They fought for the same rights as other Creek citizens, working to ensure that their new freedoms were recognized and protected. These freedmen and their descendants formed an important bridge between African American and Native American histories, intertwining their cultural legacies with the broader struggles for equality and justice. Despite their important contributions to the Creek Nation, the story of the Creek Freedmen has been largely ignored and erased from mainstream history. The challenges they faced didn't end with their formal recognition as citizens in 1866. Over the years, their rights within the Creek Nation have been systematically downplayed, marginalized, and in some cases, outright denied. For much of the 20th century, the Creek Freedmen's descendants faced exclusion from the tribe's official membership rolls. While they had been recognized as citizens in the Treaty of 1866, their status as full members of the Creek Nation was challenged time and time again. One of the most significant issues arose in the early 21st century when efforts were made to remove the Creek Freedmen and their descendants from the nation's official rolls. In 1979, the Creek Nation voted to limit citizenship to individuals with at least 1/4 Creek blood, a policy that effectively excluded many freedmen descendants, even though they had been recognized as citizens under the 1866 treaty. This action sparked outrage among the descendants of the Creek Freedmen, who argued that their ancestors had fought for the same rights as other Creek citizens and should not be excluded from the benefits of citizenship. This ongoing struggle for recognition culminated in legal battles over the status of the freedmen. The issue came to a head in 2020 when the Creek Nation voted to readmit the freedmen descendants as full citizens. However, this decision was met with controversy and legal disputes. Over tribal membership and citizenship rights continue to this day. The fight for the recognition of the Creek Freedmen's contributions to the tribe remains a contentious and ongoing issue. The erasure of the Creek Freedmen's legacy is not just a historical injustice, it's a modern-day struggle for equality and recognition. By denying the Creek Freedmen their rightful place in the tribe, the Creek Nation has not only undermined the contributions of their African American members, but also continued a pattern of exclusion and discrimination that has lasted for over a century. This situation mirrors broader themes in the history of Black Native American tribes, where the legacies of Black Native Americans have often been overshadowed by mainstream narratives of race, identity, and colonialism. The story of the Creek Freedmen is one of resilience, sacrifice, and perseverance in the face of erasure. Their fight for recognition and equality has lasted for generations, and it is a crucial chapter in the larger story of Native American and African American history. While their rights were denied and their contributions downplayed, the Creek Freedmen's legacy remains an essential part of the history of the Creek Nation. Their story serves as a reminder that the struggle for justice, recognition, and equality is ongoing, and that the fight for rightful acknowledgement is far from over. Reclaiming and honoring the history of the Creek Freedmen is not just about restoring their place in Creek history. It is about restoring the richness and diversity of American history itself. The Seminole Negro Indian Scouts were a unique and remarkable group of soldiers in the U.S. Army, composed primarily of Black Seminoles. These men were descendants of enslaved Africans who had escaped to live among the Seminole tribe in Florida, creating a distinct community blending African and Native American traditions. By the late 19th century, the Black Seminoles had cemented their reputation as some of the most skilled and effective soldiers in the U.S. military. Their unique history of resilience and survival, forged through centuries of oppression and struggle, positioned them as invaluable assets during one of the most tumultuous periods of American expansion, the Indian Wars. The Seminole Negro Indian Scouts, unsung heroes of the frontier, during the Indian Wars of the late 1800s, the U.S. Army enlisted the help of the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts, a group composed primarily of Black Seminoles and some Native American allies. These scouts were tasked with navigating the rugged and often hostile terrain of the southwestern frontier. Their knowledge of the land, honed by years of survival in the wilderness, and their unmatched tracking and combat skills made them indispensable to the military's campaigns, particularly during the Apache Wars. The Scouts played a critical role in operations against Geronimo and the Apache resistance. Their ability to locate enemy positions, gather intelligence, and engage in combat was pivotal in securing U.S. control over vast areas of the American Southwest. In 1886, their contributions were instrumental in the capture of Geronimo, marking one of the final victories in the U.S. Army's efforts to subdue indigenous resistance. More than soldiers, guardians of freedom and justice for many of the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts, military service was about more than aiding the U.S. Army. It was a means of securing their freedom and protecting their communities. Many Scouts were formerly enslaved or descendants of those who had escaped slavery, and their service symbolized a fight for recognition and equality in a nation that had long marginalized them. Their role as Scouts was deeply intertwined with their identities as both African Americans and Native Americans. They defended the Seminole tribe's freedom while simultaneously asserting their rights as free men in a society that sought to erase their contributions. This dual struggle placed the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts at the intersection of African American and Native American histories, making their service a powerful testament to resilience and determination. Overlooked contributions and erased legacy despite their undeniable impact on the U.S. military success during the Indian Wars. The Seminole Negro Indian Scouts have largely been relegated to the margins of history. Unlike celebrated units, such as the Buffalo Soldiers or the Rough Riders, the Scouts' heroic service has often been overshadowed or forgotten altogether. Their pivotal role in the capture of Geronimo, a defining moment in the Apache Wars, is rarely acknowledged in mainstream historical narratives. The erasure of the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts extends beyond military history. Within Native American history, the contributions of Black Seminoles to the broader Seminole Nation have often been minimized or ignored. For much of the 20th century, the legacy of the Scouts was downplayed even within the Seminole community itself, where their Black heritage sometimes faced discrimination or neglect. The fight for recognition in recent years, efforts have emerged to reclaim the legacy of the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts. Historians, descendants, and activists have worked tirelessly to bring their stories to light, advocating for their rightful place in both military and Native American history. These efforts underscore the importance of recognizing the Scouts, not only for their bravery and military contributions, but also for their role in shaping the cultural and historical landscape of the United States. Honoring their legacy, the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts were more than soldiers. They were guardians of freedom, defenders of justice, and builders of a unique cultural identity that bridged African American and Native American traditions. Their legacy is a powerful reminder of the resilience and strength of communities that refuse to be erased. Honoring the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts means acknowledging their sacrifices, celebrating their achievements, and integrating their stories into the broader narratives of American history. Their contributions are a testament to the enduring fight for equality, freedom, and recognition, values that continue to inspire future generations.